All right, now I want to explain or discuss a second essay with you. Okay, this is a compare and contrast essay of a film. Again, it's in MLA format, and it's called The Pain of Romance. In modern human life, especially in youth, romantic relationships seem unavoidable, even in light of the fact that most do not work out. Even people who, with their logical minds, wish to never get involved with the emotions of others may still follow their hearts into love affairs that they know may not work out. This, of course, may lead to deep heartbreak in the end, and even if it doesn't, the preceding relationship will still be filled with stress, fights, and frustrations. Notice how this starts broad talking thematically about the idea of love in romantic relationships. This is the idea that is illustrated in various ways by Michael Gondry's 2004 film Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and Woody Allen's 1977 film Annie Hall. Here we see the introduction of the films and who produced them. Upon first viewing, these films may seem to have little in common, but upon closer inspection, it's easy to see that in addition to their differences, they share many distinct similarities. Though there isn't a happy ending for both couples in each film, two mismatched characters start a romantic relationship that break up, which leads the male character to seek answers for their memories of the past. So we see that in our compare and contrast, that even though there isn't a happy ending for both couples, so that's something that's going to be different, that both films have mismatched characters, so that's something that will be explored, as well as they're dealing with breakups that lead the male characters to seek answers from their memories. And so then we get into our first body paragraph. In both films, the female main characters are whimsical and artistically minded free spirits, and the men, who are much more serious and introverts, love them for it. So here, in this paragraph, or this topic sentence, we see that this is going to relate to the idea of mismatched characters. In Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, this is the case with Clementine and Joel. Early in the film, when Joel and Clementine meet for the first time, Joel is seen alone at dinner, writing in a journal, and Clementine randomly starts talking to him about herself. She has orange dyed hair, and she mentions to Joel that she does this to represent her personality, which is throughout the film notably loud and impulsive. Joel, on the other hand, does not want to talk to Clementine, but he seems to have a hard time getting the words out. He keeps saying things that it keeps saying that everything is nice, which annoys Clementine because at first she thinks he's trying to ignore her or brush her off. Joel's attraction to Clementine stems from the idea that she represents everything he wants to be but isn't. So here we see the setup that there are these two characters that are different in appearance and in their desires, but we see ultimately that the issue here, or why Joel is so attracted to this character of Clementine, is she's what everything he wants to be. Now, our next paragraph. Similar to this is the relationship between Annie and Alvy in Annie Hall. In this film, the viewer is introduced to Alvy, and from the opening monologue, it is clear that although a comedian by trade, he is paranoid. He is a paranoid and nervous introvert. He mainly likes to read books that deal with the concept of death, and he even tries to push Annie into reading books like this, even though it doesn't suit her personality. In an early scene, the two meet while playing tennis, and in that scene, Annie acts against social norms with her obvious attempt to spend some alone time with Alvy outside of the tennis courts. She is slightly absent-minded and optimistic in her outlook on life, which Alvy likes a lot because he is pessimistic and relies on her to see the good or innocence in things. So here we see that both of these films do in fact have characters where the men and women are very different and don't seem like they'd be a good match, but end up in some ways being so. In both films, most of the plot revolves around the male characters interacting with the memories of their broken relationships in hopes of finding important information about where it all went wrong. In Eternal Sunshine, this happens when Joel opts for the mind-erasing procedure. In this procedure, the viewers watch Joel physically interact with these memories of his intimate relationship with Clementine. At this point in the movie, the viewer does not know why they broke up, so as Joel re-experiences moments he previously had with Clementine, the viewer both sees the memory itself as well as Joel's reaction to the memory. While in his memories, he realizes that he and Clementine both screwed up in various ways, and ultimately he misses the memories, even the bad ones, which is what influences him to get back together with Clementine in the end. In Annie Hall, the film begins with Alvy talking directly to the camera, explaining that he and Annie broke up, and he can't stop thinking about where it all went wrong. Throughout the movie, the viewer watches flashbacks of the relationship they had, and oftentimes Alvy looks directly at the camera and comments about the particular scene. He often poses rhetorical questions to the camera about the situation. Alvy searches his own mind for answers to a puzzle he cannot solve, and even if he did find the answers, he probably wouldn't know very well what to do with them. This can be true because at the end, as Annie explains why she won't get back together with him, he doesn't accept the answer and ends up using his rental car as a bumper car in the parking lot. So here we see both of these paragraphs talking about how in the film, most of the plot revolves around the male character interacting with memories. And then, finally, the big difference between the films is that in Eternal Sunshine, the couple decides to give their relationship another try, but in Annie Hall, the couple stays broken up. The last thing the viewers see in Eternal Sunshine is their decision to get back together. In this scene, both characters, despite having their memories erased from each other, decide that, even though the tapes from Lacuna Inc. have made them aware of all the reasons they broke up, the experience of the relationship is worth all the pain and suffering they had to go through because all of it led to a remarkably intimate love that the two may never be able to experience again. Essentially, Joel and Clementine decide to redo their relationship and experience the same problems all over again, just so they can remember the few moments when it felt so great to love each other. The two characters can assume they will break up again, but now they also have the rare chance to get it right, even if it's improbable. In Annie Hall, one of the most remarkable things about the film is that in oppositions to nearly every other romantic comedy that came before, the couple does not reunite. And despite this, the ending still feels somewhat happy. The reason for this is that Alvy has to come to a greater understanding about relationships in general. He realizes that, in truth, most relationships will not work out. But without them, life is meaningless. He sees the value in relationships, just like Joel and Clementine do in Eternal Sunshine. Therefore, even though the film ends on a much different situation, the realization in both films is essentially the same. Relationships are difficult and fragile, but ultimately, they're worth it. Though the specific situations of each film are vastly different, both films portray the breakups of two seemingly mismatched characters that lead the main characters to seek answers from their memories, but in the end, only one couple gets back together. When looked at side by side, both Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and Annie Hall tackle one of the biggest questions in modern human life. Why do human beings seek romance with one another? Even though in reality there's no right answer to the question, the simple act of asking the question brings up even more questions tied to the idea of romantic love. Romantic love is a subject that most human beings will have to face and define for themselves throughout their lives. Though both films hint at the fact that romantic relationships are worth all the emotional pain and suffering that comes with them, everyone will have to decide for themselves. Many times, as the old saying goes, opposites attract, and certainly relationships seem a lot like opposition. Sometimes, however, people need opposition to influence how they grow as an individual. Notice here with the conclusion, it does a really good job of answering the so what question. It gives us a little bit of summary, and then it really talks about this idea of romance and love and relationships and why people choose to get into those. And then we have our works cited page. Something else to notice, both samples that I've given you, but this is important to note, go point by point. So we talk about the idea of mismatched characters. It says Eternal Sunshine, and then it talks about Annie Hall. Then in both films, the plot revolves around the male character interacting with memories. It talks about Eternal Sunshine. Then it talks about Annie Hall. Then it goes to the third point, which is the big difference between the films and their outcomes of the relationships. It talks about Eternal Sunshine. Then it talks about Annie Hall. And then there's the conclusion. This is a really efficient and good way to organize your essay. So keep this in mind. If you have questions or need help, please let me know.